I think that, to give you what I think is the best statement that was ever made was George Kennan, the great Russian specialist who was briefly our ambassador in Moscow, wrote an introduction to the Marquis de Castaig's Russia in 1839. And Kennan said, I don't know whether this book is a good description of Nicholas I's Russia, but it is a perfect description of Leonid Brezhnev's Soviet Union. Right. In other words, the cultural things that the Marquis de Castaing sensed in the 1830s were still very much alive in the Soviet Union of the 1960s and 70s. I would say that most of those cultural values are still there. And I think we made a mistake. People always ask, why did communism triumph in Russia? But the real question is, why did Russia go communist? And the reason is that the Marxist-Leninist ideas were much more congruent with the history of Russian political culture than they were elsewhere. Tragically.
I think
tragically.
One of our writers, Grigory Paskov, was former political prisoner.
Right.
Has written on our blog, I think, only in Russia is the past unpredictable and the future predictable.
Well, I think that I agree with that. I think the future is going to be more of the same, and that's not attractive. The reason I do what I do is because there are Russians, many, not a huge percentage, but many, who are not part of that. Before 1917, there was emerging in Russia a thin strata of people who were westernized Europeans, who spoke English and French, who wanted a Rechtsstaat, which is one of the reasons I was so taken by Pavlov's critique of Pavlovsky. The notion that Vladimir Putin is the Stolypin of today. The only thing Putin has in common with Stolypin is a Stolypin necktie, which was Russian slang in 1911 for people who were hanged by the Tsarist authorities. That's the only thing he has in common. Because I think there are Russians who could have made a transition, and I think the West could have helped them. Tragically, we have usually found it easier and simpler to deal with the political elite, and with the possible exception of Boris Yeltsin, whom I happen to admire despite everything. He should be in the cell next to Putin at The Hague if he were still alive for crimes against Chechnya. But he was the closest thing you would get to a Western leader. He actually didn't like communism. He actually didn't like the KGB, unlike Putin, who likes both. I mean, there was a wonderful piece on the grani.ru website this morning that started out by saying, yesterday someone in Munich blew up the statue of Adolf Hitler, and the Chancellor of Germany announced that Angela Merkel, that she was prepared to spend 8 million euros to restore it. Well, of course, this didn't happen. But it did happen if you change it to St. Petersburg rather than Munich, Lenin rather than Hitler, and Matvienko and Putin rather than Angela Merkel. That says something. The utter and complete failure of the West, and it was complete, to recognize the horror of communism and the way in which it threw that society back 300 years, at least 300 years. And we didn't allow for lustration, we didn't support lustration, and so what we got is the ugly Komsomolka level people ruling the country. Had there been no 1991, these people would be in office. And that is a crime.
Yeah, absolutely.
That is a crime.